Everyone says there is death and destruction ahead. And yet we are looking at very troubled times. And when we look back to the advent of the first Renaissance, we see that the situation in Rome was facing many conflicts. A long line of emperors had taken power, replacing the republic for which it stood. Leaders upon leaders of the same name families, one after the other, in a dynastic form, had taken over the government institutions. There was chaos of war, economic downfall. The situation was dire, and even the people's very own health was at stake as they were unable to handle their own medical care and needs in the society. To put it bluntly, Rome was on fire. But from that fire developed the first Renaissance, a period of thought and wonderment. A new generation of thinkers and leaders came about. But first we must go back to the darkness, to the calamity, to the death, to the destruction, because that must come first. That is the first stage in understanding a Renaissance cycle. There must be a great catastrophe or calamity. Now, some people say that the world is heading towards greater catastrophes and calamities, and many of us would like to beg to differ. Being from the Muslim community and growing up here in the United States, I was in high school here in Texas, the Lone Star State, during the first Gulf War. And I remember the changing environment and how things started to adjust, and you could feel it. You could feel it in the air, that feeling that there's a storm coming. Something big's going to happen. It's going to be bad. You know? That sense, that urgency, that feeling. Now, calamity and destruction or a catastrophe has to happen. Now, when we think of Rome, we think about degradation on a massive scale. And we're seeing similar situations occur here in the United States, where we look about the corruption in government and politics and people tired of the sectarian politics and party partisanship, and we look at the economic decline, we look at the healthcare situation, but even more importantly, we look at a general overall feeling that the republic is not functioning as it should be. Regardless of which party you belong to, the feeling that the republic is not functioning for the benefit of the people. Now, sometimes a catastrophe or calamity can be a specific event. Now, when we look to the history of the United States, we see that one of the most major catastrophic event happened from the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, when our U.S. soil was actually attacked by Japanese pilots coming across the seas. From that point on, we had the Gulf War, and during my lifetime we had the attack on the World Trade Center. Now, I remember believing at the time of the attack on the World Trade Center that this is it. It's going to change. That's it. You know, the storm was coming, and there it is. It hit. You know, it hit the fan. We're going to go into the siege mode. They're going to start rounding up people. If you're a Muslim, that's it. Civil liberties are gone. But strangely enough, nothing else happened for many, many years. Now, some will say that the 9/11 tragedy, because of its graphic nature and because of the ramifications that ensued from it, the attacks on 9/11 have become a changing point in the history of our nation. This could be the catastrophic catalyst that propels a new renaissance, if we are paying attention to the signs. Now, what do I mean by that? Meaning, we've come to a point in our society as a whole where we've said, okay, we've engaged in a struggle after 9/11 and started a war in Afghanistan and a war in Iraq and taken on this global effort to fight terrorism. And then we've also began in the last few years of this long extended war on terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan that's now coming on 6 or 7 years. We've started to understand that there is a war of ideology that needs to be fought. Well, an ideological war happens through the traditional mediums of a renaissance: speech, literature, oration, poems, music, expression in the arts through comics, writing, political cartooning, films, propaganda, documentaries, and how the media frames issues. All of that has to do with the way a renaissance is created and the mediums to allow it to spread. Now, if we're willing to accept that the war on terrorism could be a war of ideology, then we should also possibly entertain the idea that 9/11 could be the catalytic event that creates a conducive environment for people with new ideas to bring about change come to the forefront. Meaning, if we are to understand the significance of 9/11, we're not talking about left or right politics. The left tries to say that we need to change and understand everybody. The right tries to say 9/11 was the critical thing. We need to be on offense on the war on terror. Well, what if we were on offense in the ideological war? Meaning, spreading new ideas, spreading a change mentality. What if that was how we understood that phase of the Renaissance and how we bring about the new Renaissance generation? 9/11, yes, it was the catastrophe that can propel us to a new way forward. It's something that has to be understood by the government in the way they approach their war on terror globally as a war of ideology. Meaning, are we going to foster new change and new ideas and create a global renaissance with this effort so that people are able to spring up from amongst themselves in all pockets of life to bring about a positive environment for themselves and those around them, creating a renaissance environment? But we have to accept that 9/11 was that catastrophic event, and we have to take from that lesson of 9/11, and this is both on the Muslim and the non-Muslim side. For Muslims, it means, no, you cannot sit on your laurels. That means you can't just take it easy and relax. No, you have to be willing to put yourself on the line and go out there and do what you need to do to make the world a better place. Doesn't matter who you are or where you are or what your situation is. This is the test that Allah has put in front of you. This is where you are and who you are and what you're supposed to do. And all of us have this test. 9/11. The tragedy comes first. Has it happened, and are we ready to pick up the baton and move forward for the next Renaissance generation? Go to hotconflict.com. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.